For more than 4 millennia, they have stood unbroken, monuments to eternity, to ambition, and to something beyond comprehension. The Great Pyramids of Egypt rise from the sands, not just as tombs, but as questions carved in stone. How did a civilization over 4,000 years ago, without cranes, engines, or steel, raise blocks weighing more than 50 tons with mathematical precision so perfect it still challenges engineers today? Who built them? Was it an army of slaves, whipped and chained under the burning sun? Was it a power that came from the heavens, visitors from the stars who gifted humanity a spark of impossible knowledge? Or were these monuments the work of beings long erased from history, giants whose strength and size once ruled the earth? The answers lie buried beneath the sands, scattered among broken bones and forgotten legends. But to understand who built the pyramids, we must strip away thousands of years of myth, deceit, and wonder, and step into the heart of the mystery itself. This is not just the story of stone and sand. It is the story of belief, of how humanity explains the impossible. This is the Mystery Builders. For centuries, one story echoed louder than any other, a story of cruelty, domination, and suffering. That the pyramids of Egypt were built not by free men, but by slaves. Ancient Greek historians like Herodotus, writing 2,000 years after the pyramids were built, described a vision of unimaginable hardship. 100,000 slaves toiling under the lash for decades, their lives consumed by the will of a god-king. The image was powerful, and for millennia it defined our understanding of Egypt: pain, chains, whips. The story fit perfectly with how later civilizations, including the Greeks and Romans, viewed the world: a hierarchy of power where human lives were fuel for glory. But archaeology tells a different story, one written not in myth, but in stone, bone, and bread. Just south of the Great Pyramid, a discovery shattered the old image. Beneath the desert, archaeologists uncovered workers' villages, small stone houses arranged neatly, containing pottery, cooking tools, and remnants of meals. They found ovens, bread molds, and beer jars, evidence of a workforce that was fed daily and treated with respect. Nearby lay cemeteries, holding the remains of those who died during the construction. Their bodies were not thrown away, but carefully buried beside their work site, wrapped in linen, surrounded by offerings. The kind of treatment given to honored workers, not slaves. In 1990, archaeologist Zahi Hawass and his team unearthed inscriptions scrawled by the workers themselves. Teams proudly named themselves the Drunkards of Menkaure and the Friends of Khufu. These names weren't marks of oppression. They were signatures of pride. The workers who built the pyramids were not foreigners in chains. They were Egyptians, farmers, masons, bakers, and craftsmen. Every year, when the Nile flooded and fields vanished beneath the water, tens of thousands of men were called into national service. Instead of farming, they built. They hauled limestone, mixed mortar, and shaped stone. Their work fed their families, and, more importantly, their faith. To the ancient Egyptians, the pharaoh was not a tyrant, but a bridge between earth and the divine. Building his tomb was not an act of slavery. It was a sacred duty. To raise stone toward the heavens was to take part in a divine act, the creation of eternity. The pyramids became more than tombs. They were monuments of devotion, built by a nation's hands and hearts, not by its chains. Even modern engineering supports this view. Ramps, sledges, wooden rollers, and copper tools were all within reach of Egypt's technology. What seems impossible today was achievable through organization, will, and the power of thousands working as one. Yet the myth of the slave-built pyramid persists, perhaps because it appeals to our darker fascination that greatness must come from suffering. But the evidence says otherwise. The pyramids are not monuments to oppression. They are monuments to human genius, endurance, and unity. When the torches of history burn low and reason fades into shadow, imagination steps forward. In the 20th century, A new idea took hold, one not carved in stone, but in wonder. That perhaps the builders of the pyramids were not human at all, but visitors from the stars. The spark came in 1968 when Swiss author Erich von Däniken published Chariots of the Gods. His question mark would ignite half a century of fascination. Could ancient civilizations have been guided, even engineered, by beings from other worlds? Supporters pointed to the pyramid's precision. Each side of the Great Pyramid deviates by less than a fraction of a degree from true north. Its base is level to within inches across 13 acres of desert rock. To them, this was not human handiwork. It was technology. They asked, how could Bronze Age laborers with copper tools and wooden sleds have aligned a 6-million-ton monument with mathematical accuracy rivaling modern survey equipment? And why, they wondered, do similar pyramidal shapes appear in cultures oceans apart, in Mexico, in China, and even under the jungles of Cambodia? To believers, the answer was simple, because someone showed them how. The theory spread through books, television, and cinema. Ancient astronauts, luminous disks in the sky, gods descending on beams of light. The story had every ingredient of modern myth. It promised that humankind's greatest achievements were not born of sweat and soil, but of contact. Yet behind the allure lies a question far older than science fiction. Why do we find it easier to imagine aliens than to accept the brilliance of ancient people? Archaeology, patient and sober, offers its answer in evidence. At nearby quarries, teams have found dolerite-pounding stones, round, heavy tools used to break limestone and granite. They have traced ramps carved into bedrock, the faint scars where wooden rollers once dragged blocks upward. At the pyramid's base, workers left graffiti celebrating their crews. No trace of lasers, alloys, or machines. Inside the pyramid, not circuitry, but chiseled chambers and passages, built with hand-placed stone. The air shafts once thought to be ventilation for alien craft are now understood as symbolic star passages aimed toward Orion and the circumpolar constellations, celestial doorways for the pharaoh's soul, not runways for ships. In truth, the alignment with Orion reveals something far more human, an obsession with cosmic order. To the Egyptians, the sky was divine geometry, the heavens where their gods lived. By echoing that perfection on earth, they believed they brought the universe itself into harmony. But still, the alien theory endures. Not because of facts, but because of feeling. When we stand before the pyramids, their scale defies the senses. Each block is a silent paradox. Too large, too precise, too ancient. Awe demands an answer. And sometimes, wonder reaches for the stars. Scientists counter that such theories often undervalue human capability. To say aliens built it is to erase the ingenuity of the Egyptians, the engineers who measured with shadows, the architects who planned in ratios, the laborers who turned stone into legacy. Yet perhaps the fascination with cosmic builders reveals something universal. Deep down, humans are storytellers, reaching for meaning in the infinite. We want to believe we are connected to the vast unknown, that the gaze we lift toward the stars is returned. Whether or not any beings ever descended from the heavens, the pyramids still speak to that longing. They are messages written in geometry, not to the gods, not to aliens, but to time itself. And time has answered. The builders were mortal, but their work was not. The alien theory, though unproven, survives as a mirror, reflecting our hunger for wonder and our refusal to accept limits. Across ancient civilizations, whispers of giants echo like distant thunder, from the Sumerian kings said to have ruled for thousands of years, to the biblical Nephilim who were on the earth in those days. It's a theme found not just in myth, but carved into stone, painted on temple walls, and retold in oral traditions spanning continents. And some believe the Great Pyramids of Egypt may be the lasting fingerprints of those forgotten beings, a race of colossal builders whose power once reshaped the earth. The idea seems fantastical, until one considers how deeply the legend runs. In the Book of Enoch, written long before the Christian era, the Nephilim were described as the offspring of celestial beings and human women, giants who possessed forbidden knowledge. They taught humanity metalwork, astronomy, and architecture before being destroyed in a great flood. In ancient Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki were gods or demigods who descended from the heavens and built the first cities. Some theorists link them to Egypt's mysterious builders, suggesting that the same beings who erected ziggurats in Sumer may have shared their knowledge or their presence along the Nile. Even Egyptian texts themselves offer tantalizing clues. In the Turin Papyrus, a damaged but remarkable king list, there is a record of pre-dynastic rulers known as the Shemsu-Hor, the followers of Horus who reigned for centuries before the first known pharaoh. Were these divine ancestors metaphorical or literal? Some researchers believe these followers of Horus were not gods at all, but beings of extraordinary size and strength, remnants of an older species whose monuments became the foundation of Egypt's golden age. Archaeologists, of course, have found no verified skeletons of giants in Egypt. Yet, stories persist of unusual discoveries, bones too large for ordinary men, uncovered and quietly removed during early excavations in the 19th and early 20th centuries. In an age when archaeology and empire were intertwined, some argue that any evidence challenging human origins was swiftly concealed to preserve scientific orthodoxy. These claims, though unproven, fuel the belief that fragments of truth may have been deliberately buried, both in sand and in history. Yet, despite the intrigue, mainstream archaeology remains grounded in what the evidence confirms. No authenticated remains of giant beings have ever been publicly documented in Egypt. The tools found at pyramid sites are simple yet effective: copper chisels, dolerite-pounding stones, wooden sledges, and ramps, all human in scale and method. The precision of the pyramids, while astonishing, can be explained by organization, not superhuman strength. Still, the myth endures, not because of proof, but because of wonder. The human imagination fills gaps that science leaves open, and perhaps that is its own form of truth. For those who believe in giants, the pyramids are not monuments to pharaohs, but to a forgotten age of power, a time when divine beings walked among men, and stone itself was their signature. For others, the tale of giants speaks not of physical size, but of spiritual scale, that the people who built the pyramids were giants in courage, faith, and vision. Whether flesh and blood titans or poetic metaphors, the message is the same. The builders of Egypt were larger than life. And so, the sands of Giza remain both cradle and crypt, holding secrets of those who came before, whether they were kings, gods, or giants. The Great Pyramids were not raised by slaves, nor by beings from beyond the stars, but by Egyptians, people of earth and faith. With ropes, ramps, and river rafts, they turned limestone into legend. Every block they lifted carried their hope for eternity. It began with a dream of immortality. Pharaoh Khufu, ruler of Egypt's 4th dynasty around 2500 BCE, stood on the windswept plateau of Giza. Before him stretched the endless desert, shimmering under the sun. In his heart burned a single vision: to build a monument so vast, so perfect, that it would defy time itself. A stairway to the heavens, a bridge between man and the gods. Priests charted the stars night after night, measuring the heavens with cords and plumb lines. Astronomers mapped the paths of Orion and Sirius, for the king's final resting place had to align with eternity itself. The Giza Plateau was chosen not by chance, but by sacred design. Its bedrock strong, its position aligned with the rising sun, its view commanding the horizon. Once the ground was marked, the call went out across Egypt. From the fertile floodplains along the Nile came thousands of workers, not slaves, but citizens and skilled craftsmen. They were bakers, masons, carpenters, rope makers, and haulers. Many were farmers whose lands lay under water during the annual Nile flood. They came willingly, proud to serve their pharaoh and earn steady rations of bread, beer, and meat. Archaeologists have found their village near the pyramid, streets, bakeries, and even medical quarters, proof that these men and women lived, worked, and rested as a community of builders, not captives. The work began at the quarry. The sound of copper chisels and pounding dolerite balls echoed across the plateau. Men cut massive blocks of limestone from the bedrock, hammering patiently until cracks appeared. Wooden wedges were driven into the fissures, soaked with water until they expanded, splitting the stone free. Dust filled the air, the scent of fresh rock mixing with sweat and sun. Each block weighed up to 15 tons, a piece of eternity shaped by human hands. Transporting these stones required ingenuity. Wooden sledges were used to drag the massive blocks across the desert. At first, the sand resisted, bogging down the weight, until someone discovered that pouring water on the sand ahead of the sledges reduced friction. With dampened grains binding together, the stones glided forward more easily. It was an elegant solution, ancient physics at work. Modern experiments have proven it true. With just the right amount of moisture, it would take half the force to pull a sledge through sand. Lines of workers hauled the blocks in rhythm, chanting to the beat of drums. Overseers called out commands, while flag-bearers signaled when to pull. Each movement was a coordinated act of strength and unity. From the quarry to the construction site, the stones moved steadily across the desert, guided by sweat and determination. Not all the stones came from nearby. The granite blocks used for the inner chambers were quarried in Aswan, hundreds of kilometers to the south. These enormous slabs, each weighing up to 80 tons, were floated down the Nile on rafts and barges. The river became the lifeline of the project. Skilled sailors navigated the waters, steering loads of stone toward Giza's harbors. There, the stones were unloaded and dragged inland using rollers and ropes woven from papyrus fiber. The foundation was the first triumph. The Egyptians leveled the vast base of the pyramid with astonishing accuracy, within less than an inch across more than 13 acres. They achieved this using nothing more than sighting rods, plumb lines, and water-filled channels. Even today, engineers marvel at this precision. It was not divine power. It was discipline, measurement, and mastery. With the base in place, the construction rose tier by tier. To lift stones higher, the builders created ramps, massive earthen causeways reinforced with mud brick and limestone chippings. Some extended straight outward from the pyramid, others spiraled upward along its edges. On these ramps, men hauled the stones using ropes, pushing from behind, pulling from the front, their feet sinking into the warm sand. As the pyramid grew taller, the ramps were rebuilt and extended, constantly adapting to the rising structure. Each block was carefully placed, its alignment checked by sight and string. Copper chisels shaped the edges, ensuring perfect fit. The limestone casing stones, smooth and gleaming, were the final layer, polished until they reflected the sun like a mirror. Under the blazing light, the pyramid once shone white and radiant, a beacon visible for miles across the desert. Beneath the construction site, life thrived. The workers' city was a bustling hub of human effort. Archaeologists have uncovered bakeries large enough to feed thousands, breweries producing vats of beer, and graves of honored workers buried with pottery and bread, symbols of respect, not slavery. There were workshops for copper tools, stonemason training areas, and even evidence of medical care for injured workers. These discoveries shattered the old myth of slave labor and revealed a society built on skill, pride, and cooperation. Years turned into decades. Generations of hands lifted the dream higher and higher until it touched the sky. As the final stone was placed and the pyramidion, the capstone, gleamed atop the summit, Egypt beheld its triumph. The Great Pyramid of Khufu stood 146 meters tall, its sides aligned with the four cardinal directions within a fraction of a degree. It was more than a tomb. It was a mathematical and architectural masterpiece, encoded with celestial meaning. When the work was done, the workers celebrated. The ramp system was dismantled, the tools buried, and the site purified by priests. Khufu's soul was believed to ascend through the pyramid's narrow shafts toward the circumpolar stars, the undying ones. To his people, he had become divine, his resting place the bridge between the world of men and the realm of gods. Centuries passed, the limestone casing eroded, the capstone vanished, but the heart of the pyramid endured. Beneath its worn surface lies the truth of its creation, a truth etched not in myth but in evidence. The pyramids were built by Egyptians. Archaeologists have found their footprints, their graffiti, their tools, and even their laughter scratched into stone, inscriptions reading "The Drunkards of Menkaure" or "The Friends of Khufu." Teams of builders leaving behind the proud mark of their work. So, when we look upon the Great Pyramid today, we are not gazing at a mystery, but at a testament to human will. It stands not as proof of alien intervention or giant builders,